Paulie Malignaggi being fired from Showtime starting to seem more and more justified. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to my channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. And I'm back with the follow-up video. Back like a chiropractor. Back like I never left. Back like cook crack. Let's get it. Now, I want to make this follow-up video. There's a lot going on in the world. 2020 has been rough. A lot of heavy hearts. And I had to follow up to this very, I guess, touchy subject, you know, especially this year, man. Like I said, this year's been rough. We lost some greats, the Black Mamba, Kobe Bryant, his daughter, everybody on the helicopter. And there's just a lot of racial tension and different things going on in the world. Now, I want to make this video because I think it's fitting. You have Paulie Malignaggi, who was recently fired by Showtime, or let go of. They did a severance package because they couldn't come to an agreement, and the people up top with Showtime's parent company, CBS, they were involved. And Paulie, he's the type of person to go down with the ship. He has these strong viewpoints, and you know, he was willing to, instead of taking the higher road, he didn't want to bend or fold, so he got what he had coming to him. Now, to start off, what Paulie said was definitely insensitive and inaccurate remarks. It's not just about being a PC society or, you know, being super sensitive. These remarks that he said absolutely aren't even true. They can't be justified or quantified, right? And when he got let go of by Showtime, there were a lot of people who off top understood it, but there were a few people who they tried to side with the radical beliefs of Paulie Malignaggi, like, hey man, you didn't do anything wrong, you know, who cares, just go to DAZN and stuff. And they try to egg him on and encourage him on for making these ignorant comments, right? And now you see Paulie Malignaggi, he said he's plotting the next move, always one step ahead, hashtag built different. So yeah, I doubt he was plotting the next move and expecting to not have a job in America with Showtime calling the fights. So, you know, that's just my personal opinion. But in case you live under a rock and don't know, I'll like paraphrase and go over some of what he said. So people have to also keep in mind that this whole Paulie situation, this doesn't stem from one outing or two comments or one comment. People were like listening to an interview that was conducted over the phone, and some people were acting like nothing was wrong that was said in that particular interview. But there was something wrong said in that particular interview. But again, some people, they just want to pick sides based on emotion or whatever, and they're not looking at the totality of the situation. It really wasn't one or two comments that Paulie made. It was several comments on a very sensitive and touchy subject. And before I get into some of the past comments made by Paulie Malignaggi, let's explore what's going on in America, because we have the same man in Paulie Malignaggi, right, who can't identify or relate to the African American struggle, and he stipulates or he suggests that systemic racism at one point in this country existed, but now racism doesn't exist. It's more fabricated, and you know, he took this wild standpoint that it's really an optical illusion in the media, and you know, spin doctors that are making you believe these things. They're making you believe these things rather than them being the case. He says and claims that there's no racism in boxing and no racism in the world, which is false. And the funny thing is, unless you're a person of color, right, then you cannot begin to express or explain the situations and everyday occurrences and things that happen, or things like being profiled, or what is endured, and you wouldn't know nothing about it because you likely don't experience those same struggles. Now, I know a lot of people, like I remember when the topic of race came up in the Mayweather and Conor McGregor fight. Conor McGregor was stating like, oh, Irish people have received oppression, and Paulie does that as well. You know, it's kind of like when people are screaming Black Lives Matter and then people revert to all lives matter. But you have to understand the Black Lives Matter is not to suggest that all lives don't matter. But if we're going off this global umbrella of all lives matter, how can you suggest that all lives matter if a sector in that group, from within that group, doesn't matter and are being eradicated and exterminated by the police force, people who are sworn to protect us? They're getting killed at an alarming rate, etc. It's no different than if you look at the medical field. I had a trash can, garbage people coming, so it might have been loud. No different than you look at the medical field. You look at the ER, the emergency room, right? What they have is a triage. That's what it's called. Now, what a triage is basically stipulates based on the severity of why you're even coming to the ER. That determines when you'll be seen by the doctors and the physicians, etc. Meaning, if I have a wood splinter, and let's say it went through my hand and it's a pretty nasty splinter, versus a guy who got shot in the head, then based on the system of a triage, the guy who got shot in the head and can potentially bleed out, he's going to get seen before me, the person with the wood splinter. Do you see what I'm saying? The person who has a really bad migraine and they're vomiting, because it's a triage and you have to go by the level of importance, at least at that given time, right? So that's the same thing with this Black Lives Matter movement, right? It's not that cops have never killed a white person or any other thing, but you keep seeing and hearing and reading, and now with the presence of social media and everybody having a cell phone, stuff that has always been going on in this country that was built off the backs of Native Americans and slaves, right? This whole country has a racist history, right? That's just facts. You know, the railroad tracks by Asians, things like that. And you have to have some form of system of a triage in order to address these situations properly. You can't just sweep it on the rug and act like they don't exist. That doesn't work. And like I said, now it's just all being recorded. Everybody has a phone. So when they see stuff and the yelling and police, people are more inclined to pick up their phone and actually film it. And now it's breaking through and coming to your home live and direct, things that would have been missed otherwise. And you're seeing great people like Lebron James, right? Who Paulie Malignaggi likes this basically this racist Italian page, and they were calling LeBron James a racist, and Paulie Malignaggi liked it, right? So you see why a person with the mindset and the radical viewpoints of Paulie Malignaggi wasn't going to last on Showtime, because Showtime has shown the propensity to have such a eclectic, multicultural type of approach to the game that it doesn't make sense to have a person like Paulie if he's just doing whatever. And this has always been the case for Showtime, and I applaud them because they've had people of color. They've given them a show. Look, We Hunt Together, right? Freddie and Baba flee the city with victim in their car. Kobe Bryant's Muse. I watched that. A great documentary, right? So you look at Showtime and you look at the series like The Chi. Look, you see people of color, right? So they've never been afraid of having documentaries. And it's not just like, oh, it's black people, but there's other people. Look, this ain't black people, you know, the brotherhood. So they have a variety, like multiple things, you know, these two, they got their show, DeSeuss and Merrill, right? Dexter. And I applaud Showtime for having that approach, that diverse approach when it comes to the game. I don't even know what this is, but Idris Elba's in it, you know? So Paulie doesn't really fit there with these radical viewpoints. And again, you have to have that system of a triage. All this stuff that Paulie Malignaggi was saying now looks even dumber. It looked dumb when he said it. It looked ignorant when he said it. But now you have situations like the Wall Street Journal. They're reporting it worldwide. This is global news. Jacob Blake was shot in the back 7 times in front of his kids for trying to break up a fight. And then he tried to get back in his car, and the police, it's on tape. Pop, 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 pop. Unnecessary. Pretty much, there's no situation where your back is facing a police officer, and that reduces your threat level right then and there. You know what I mean? Like, what did you expect him to do to the point? Like, you could have just tackled him to the ground or something like that. You see what I'm saying? Why would you shoot him in the back? Now a man has to deal with PTSD. His kids had to witness it. They have to grow up with a father with disabilities. They're saying the man is now paralyzed from the waist down, and people are fed up. So Paulie Malignaggi's comments don't fit in with this modern society even more so. And Paulie picked the dumbest of times to continue these rants that he was doing, right? You see LeBron James, this man is a great athlete and an even greater person because he represents something. 47.1 million followers. And look at what he's talking about 3 hours ago. Change doesn't happen with just talk. It happens with action and needs to happen now. For my I Promises school, kids, and community across the country, it's on us to make a difference together. That's why your vote is more than a vote. Black Lives Matter. Hashtag Black Lives Matter, right? LeBron yesterday, almost 24 hours ago, said, F this, man. We demand change. I'm sick of it. So once again, Paulie Malignaggi, the NBA was threatening to cancel the rest of the season, you know, on behalf of situations like this. F this, man. We demand change. Jacob Blake, a man shot in the back. People are sick of it. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Meanwhile, you have Paulie Malignaggi, and he's the type of person from Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, which I've heard is a real racist portion of Brooklyn. And I might attach a clip to the end of this video where there was a black kid who was killed in Bensonhurst for mistaken identity by a group of Italian people. This is all recently, but Paulie and company, they don't see it. So I was looking through the comments. A lot of people are getting on Paulie's case because, again, he looks foolish for saying what he said. But there are a couple of people egging him on like, hey, don't apologize. Just go over to DAZN. So whatever. Paulie could do whatever. DAZN could pick up this liability named Paulie Malignaggi. Good luck with that. In the era of post George Floyd, you know, all these situations, Sandra Bland, Philando, Jacob Blake. Don't you get tired of, like, how do we even have these names memorized? You know, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. They stick with us because it's the reality of what's going on. So again, Paulie Malignaggi, he just looks foolish here. He looks real foolish because he's the man that was claiming none of this stuff is going on. Then why did this man just get paralyzed and shot in the back? And thank God he's alive, you know, but there's no amount of money that could bring back his mobility and take away the pain and the anger that he probably is going to suffer for the rest of his life. You have a everyday, if you're in a wheelchair now, you're going to have a permanent, until the day you die, a permanent reminder of what you went through. That's a type of battle scar that doesn't go away because your whole life changes not being able to move. So Paulie could continue plotting his next move, but as far as his comments, it was bound to get him in trouble. Now, just to recap, Paulie Malignaggi also said, quote, "It's no longer the time of the African American in boxing anymore, or African American anymore in boxing." Listen, why would Showtime keep a man like this? If these are your viewpoints and this is what you truly believe, how are you going to be educated and show the disparity in the differentiating thought processes to call Jermell and Jamal Charlo's fight? You just said it's no longer the time of the African American anymore in boxing. So if that's your hard standpoint, guess what? Jamal Charlo is fighting against the Eastern European, who he just said are the dominant species. Not my words, Paulie Malignaggi's words. So how can we expect you to be fair if your standpoint is this? African Americans had their time in the 80s, 90s, etc., but that is over. The new dominant species. So that means if that's your standpoint, every little thing that you do or that Derevchenko does, that's going to impress you more because this is already how you're thinking. So Showtime, once again, they're fully justified, and it's starting to make a whole lot more sense. And the cold part about it, and this is a fact people need to keep in mind, Showtime and Steven Espinoza, I think they value the overall job that Paulie Malignaggi's done. In fact, Paulie used to be one of my favorite commentators, but somewhere along the way, he lost his way, started getting more radical, got too big for his britches, started making, these radical political standpoints and statements that just didn't show an open mind and diversity, right? But he was a good MC. He knows boxing, and he was calling the fights. However, none of that matters if you're so radical where you're not going to be fair. And I think that's what this kind of boils down to. How can I expect you to watch a fight if you already think Eastern Europeans are the dominant species and have taken over the planet or whatever? How can I expect you to? He said, last time I checked, the greatest fighters right now are white, right? Yesterday, he just said Tim Tszyu will go down as the best Australian-born boxer ever. These are his thought processes. So it doesn't sound like he's open-minded. It sounds like he's trying to create his own narrative, and he's willing to double down on it. So ironically enough, this was an interview in response to Devin Haney saying I won't lose to a white boy in boxing. So he condemned that and says, you're putting your foot in your mouth, kid. But the irony of it all is Paulie actually put his foot in his mouth and cost him his job. Devin Haney did make a public apology for any confusion, and now he's back on with his career. Meanwhile, Paulie doesn't have a job with the same people that were paying him for the last several years. Paulie says, and I quote, "Boxing has had its course of history with certain demographics dominating more than others. Maybe like 100 years ago, Irish fighters were better, and then the Jews and the Italians came in. I think African-American fighters became the most dominant in the sport in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s, right? It's not great to have the race discussion because it's going to coordinate division." But as he proceeds to keep talking about race, before stating, "I don't know if Devin got the memo. It's no longer the time of the African-American anymore in boxing. It's the Eastern European that has become the dominant species. Dominant species, y'all. Like, it's a different species. Like, we're not all human. Like, this is not one race, the human race." He says the Eastern Europeans have become the dominant species in boxing. I think stating someone like Haney's statement, it could be very dangerous. And again, the irony of it all, your statement was dangerous. Your statement is the one that cost you paychecks in your job. I try not to join the race conversation. This is exactly one example why I don't believe there is racial oppression in 2020 or in this century. I believe there has been, sure, but I don't believe that there is racial oppression today. This is Paulie. But Jacob Blake, there's no tension and racial oppression, but we keep seeing black people shot, killed, shot and paralyzed, shot in the back, shot when they're unarmed. But according to Paulie, I don't know, it's just happening. Luck of the draw. I believe it's all made up, and I believe that it's all exaggerated. Yeah, it's exaggerated when someone gets 7 to the back. This man is foolish, bro. This is exactly one of the reasons why the fact that the black fighter can say that, not pay any price financially. But if a white fighter said that about a black fighter as well, he'd probably lose his TV contract, and probably TV networks wouldn't touch him, So he had the wherewithal to know, or to suggest, that a white fighter couldn't say these comments. But him being a white Italian fighter, right, or an Italian fighter, he's saying these radical things, and ironically, again, it cost him his job. I won't tell you that double standard, but I'll tell you that it does prove the entire whole hypothesis of racial oppression is exaggerated in this century, Century, that's 100 years. So he's saying for the last 100 years, racial oppression. So that would include separate but equal. That would include the 60s, the Watts riots, Rodney King, 100 years, and he's saying it's exaggerated? Wow. I don't think this century has given us anything aside from any situations people want to nitpick, I mean, I'm done, bro. You guys get it. So we'll see what Paulie does next, but it's starting to sound more and more. And like I said, Paulie, he's just too foolish to admit wrong, and that's exactly why Showtime fired him, because he's willing to go down with the ship. All right, you the Titanic, bro. You the Titanic. And then got the nerve to have a Biggie shirt. Biggie wouldn't respect how you moving and how you representing Brooklyn with that closed-mindedness. And Brooklyn's a great place. You know what I mean? And that's what happens. You see that oftentimes with black culture. People love the Tupacs and the Biggies and the Baby, and they like the culture and the music and the hits and WAP and things like that. But when it comes time to representing and being fair and being open-minded, all of a sudden, all that's out the window. Oh, no, all lives matter, man. So Paulie had this coming. Now, the last thing I'll say is, again, how could we expect him upcoming Showtime fights, like primarily the fights where he said it's no longer the time of African-American and it's the exact time for Eastern European. So what do you say when Derevyanchenko get knocked out by Charlo? Or how do you call that fight if you already have these preconceived notions about the fighter based on their race and where they come from in origin? You already are thinking of ways that it makes more sense. So that means you're going to favor a person. I mean, it just goes without saying. So Paulie Malignaggi, he really put his foot in his mouth with this one. And as the world turns and more things go on, his comments look more atrocious. And he still won't admit it. He's still not going to admit that he was wrong or he said anything wrong. Now, I will clear this up. Paulie did try to apologize. If you read the reports and stuff and see what happened, this wasn't based on one occurrence or one statement or any one interview. Like Stephen Espinoza said, is more complex than that. Paulie did write an apology, but he didn't actually apologize. It's similar to, you ever get in a fight with your sibling and you kick them and then they go crying to your mom or dad or whatever, and then they make you apologize. I'm sorry. And it's a half-hearted apology. That's basically what he tried to do. I don't even think, from what I read, I don't even think he said the word sorry. He just said, to those who misconstrued what I said, it was just a roundabout half apology. And the bottom line is, people up top with CBS, the parent company, and Showtime were involved in this. And Paulie was doing this half-hearted apology. So they're like, just get rid of him. He doesn't get it. He's a liability. Get rid of him. He was trying to revise it and say, hey, how about I take out this sentence, and I'll make this one sound a little better, but I'm not going to just say, man, I was wrong, because that means he still believes what he's saying. So again, Paulie is the Titanic. He's the modern day Titanic of sports anchors. He had a good thing going. PBC, poppin' network with Showtime. They've done a great job with the pandemic schedule, arguably has the strongest schedule. And you let your mouth get you into a situation where you can't back out. And instead of just doing what was right, which is actually truthful, to recant and take back your statements, he wanted to go tit for tat and nitpick and, paraphrase and then substitute this without actually apologizing. So I get it. The people at CBS was like, nah. First of all, he's not that valuable for us to be going back and forth. This is not going to fare well. You got people like LeBron James, who is taking a hard stance on these things. And he's saying, F this, man. We demand change. We sick of it. You have people standing up. George Floyd just passed away. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Jacob Blake got shot in the back 7 times. Look, he got 1.2 million likes. Drew Brees made some comments with the New Orleans Saints, and he got drilled and had to take it back. But Paulie don't want to walk his comments back. You see what I'm saying? There's just too much. It's too much going. I told you. New media. We control the narrative. Post George Floyd, this stuff is not going to happen. So Paulie, he's living in 1992 or something where you could just say whatever. Even rappers, like, you can't say some of the stuff Eminem said on Marshall Mathers LP. You see what I'm saying? We live in a different society, a PC society. Kevin Hart was about to host the Academy Awards. They brought up tweets from him from 2005, 2007 when Chingy was out, and used it against him. And ultimately, it was too much of a liability. So they say you can't host. This particular group is not going to fare well with that. And at the top level, when it comes to companies, you're expendable. You're expendable. unless you better be Drake or something. And depending on what Drake did, if he did something unforgivable, then he'd be expendable too. So the more popular you are, the Rock or the Drakes of the world, where you're that global superstar, maybe they'll put up. But a person like Paulie Malignaggi that you've seen, they just slid Abnamadas in. We'll find somebody else. It's not worth the headache. And that's what Paulie is. He's a headache. He's too opinionated. He's taking these harsh stance in a time of racial tension and turmoil. And he's thinking that, oh, you know, I'm too big for my britches. My ish don't stink. I can say whatever. And, you know, it's going to amp on. It's like Donald Trump-ish, you know, and all that stuff. All the people doing that is backfiring. It's backfiring because, again, we live in a different society, and more you're looking foolish for saying these things. And people, they're not agreeable things, and they're not even things you can prove. How is it not the time of the African American, as Paulie put it? Like as if Terrence Crawford, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Errol Spence, Sean Porter. You know, Sean Porter just fought a guy from Germany, beat him down, shut him down, beat him down. So where was Paulie's theory? See, that's how you know it's ignorant statement. Okay, Povetkin from Russia knocked out a European fighter, right? So whatever, he knocked out a black fighter, but that was a British European fighter. And you said Eastern Europeans are taking over the world. He just got, you know, he got knocked out. But you look at Sean Porter, African American, he ran through Paulie Malignaggi like it was nothing. Formelia actually did better because he didn't get knocked out. He just had no experience at the world level, and he, you know, got shut down by Sean Porter. But Paulie got stopped by him. You know, Broner beat Paulie Malignaggi. Maybe this is some of his angst and anger. You see what I'm saying? But who knows? Formella, he's from Germany, and he said last time I checked, the last best fighters are white. Okay, then why didn't Formella win a round versus Sean Porter? Because what you're saying is cap. It is stupid. Listen, I don't care if you white, black, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Chinese, etc. If you win, you win. It's just what it is. But to make that statement and take that whole hard stance, you just sound stupid. You sound stupid, bro. Because boxing don't even work like that. You know what I mean? Styles, make fights, game plan, etc. But you can't come in with these crazy talking points and then expect to have your job. That's what happens. New media, digital mob. We still got our job. Bars. Drop your thoughts in the comment section as always. Hey, comment and subscribe. Till next video is Ego signing off. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more sports. Get unlimited access to premium content with an ESPN Plus subscription. ESPN Plus offers a variety of content, including specials, behind the scenes, docuseries like Bruce Lee's Be Water, and much more. With an ESPN Plus subscription, you get access to a ton of classic archive fights and replays from boxing and the UFC. Big names like, "Hi, I'm Mike Tyson. Come and watch my fight." Floyd Mayweather, "Easy work. I'm rich." And Manny Pacquiao, "Yes, it's up to my promoter. Just to name a few. If that's not enough, you could get the ESPN bundle, which includes ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney Plus. All three apps, one low price. You don't want to miss out. Make sure you guys click that link in the description box of all of my videos. Ego signing off. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.